work, work, work. After 3 days up at the station, feeding calves, looking at bulls, chickens, dogs, sheep, back into work. Back down here, it's Sunday morning here, well, Sunday lunchtime now, but I've been working all morning doing more packing and shipping, well, getting labels ready for packing and shipping of more tweezers to Kickstarter backers. What I'm going to do in a little while is I'll go into the workshop and, you know, maybe look at the jet powered skateboard, look at a couple of other things, show you a few things, just get back into the swing of things after a few days off. That is the centrifugal tumbler going there. What we're doing in there today is two things. One, the hookup clips, which are these things here. I'd almost run out of those, so we needed to make more, and so we're tumbling them today and assemble them tomorrow most likely. I'm also doing one of these. This is the newly designed titanium pry bar. Just had some prototypes of that done because it's pretty much the design I've done before, just with, you know, 4 or 5 minor tweaks. We're tumbling it today. That was a raw one I just showed you, so tumbling it. Once it looks pretty good, I'm gonna have photos taken, and then hopefully next week launch it on Kickstarter. It's a different enough product, and there's enough setup costs and prototyping costs that, you know, it's more than justifiable to launch via Kickstarter. Actually, you may not be aware, but I typically launch Kickstarter projects because to develop a new product, especially one that's more complex, you know, not so much a pry bar typically, but something like a carabiner, titanium pen, titanium mechanical pencil, like the prototyping costs are not insignificant. They can, you know, it can be quite a lot of money, certainly for me and where my business is at. And so a Kickstarter project, because it's almost always cheaper to get the product on there before I put it on my website, you know, it encourages people to go in and I can create a big project, and, you know, that funding basically pays for the prototyping cost. That's my sort of business and prototyping and funding secret, is that Kickstarter for me is mostly there to pay for the prototyping, and it's good for me because I can get the project out and, you know, I can do bigger, better projects. It's good for the backers because they get a discount, and often a significant discount compared to what it will be sold for on my website or elsewhere later on. And there was a third thing, but I can't remember. So those were titanium mechanical pencils, kind of running low on them a little bit, so they're surprisingly good in terms of like the lack of issues we have with them. Those pencils are just really, really good. I mean, the tolerances on them are unreal. Like, I'll maybe go into it sometime, you know, the work and the effort that goes into it, and just the sheer tolerances for making it work. And for all that, just barely a single problem, you know, from I don't know, 1,000 of them shipped out to customers. Right, back home from being at the workshop, and I'd like to talk with you about CNC milling machines. Well, not so much CNC milling machines, just milling machines. Now, in case you're not familiar with that, this is an example of one. This is actually kind of like what's the word? Hybrid. You get two types of milling machines. You get a manual milling machine, so you have an X and a Y axis, and you turn wheels like that, and the bed moves on the X and the Y, and, you know, your end mill that's machining the metal, you know, will cut through the metal, and then you've got a Z axis as well. Now that's a manual mill. You've then got a CNC mill where the whole thing is enclosed, and I'll find one for you here. Something like this. So that there is fully enclosed. You put your metal in, you close the doors, And how that typically works is you model your shape in 3D in CAD software. Now I don't know a lot about this stuff, so feel free to correct me in the comments. You then take that and you put it through like some sort of pre-processor, post-processor thing. I think it's like CAM, computer-aided machining, and that like simulates the machining of the metal from a metal block or whatever you have, and then that gets, you know, passed through to the machine and it machines what you want out. Now I know it is infinitely more complex than that. I've been talking with my machinist loads and loads and loads for the last couple of years, and it's blown my mind the complexities and what's involved in machining and the whole CNC milling process, and lathes as well, but talking milling machines today. Now you also get like a hybrid, which is often called a conversational milling machine, or a conversational language. And what that is a kind of cross between the two. It's more advanced than a manual mill. You don't have to, you know, turn the wheels. You can actually program it and it will, you know, it will do the movements for you, and it can do quite complex movements. But it's nowhere near a CNC where you know, it's multi-axis and, you know, it can go in. I'm not describing it very well. It's not just a manual mill, but it's nowhere near a CNC mill. So what you've got is a screen on the machine itself. So you have the manual handles, you can use it as a manual mill, but you've got this big controller here. And you see that kind of complex shape on there? Well, that's a good example of what can be done. So there's no programming involved. You actually type in the keys as a touch screen and you can make a shape sort of kind of like in real time on there. It will simulate it, you know, on that box, and it will then mill it out. Like, so it's nowhere near the complexity in what it can do, but it's also infinitely easier. And so for prototyping, doing things for the jet-powered skateboard, that kind of thing, it looks like a conversational milling machine really would be the way to go. So why am I telling you this? Well, I will be talking about it more in the future, but for the last few weeks my plan every week has been like, oh, I'm going to go up to Auckland, which is the main big city in New Zealand, and go and see one or two companies up there that have these conversational milling machines. There's one company in particular, and they've got one, and I want to see it running. I want to see what it can do, and that will bring me further along, and like it will really let me know if it can do what I want it to do and how it will work. So I think this week, maybe in the next couple of days, I go up to Auckland and, you know, of course bring you with me, and, you know, take a look at the machine, see what other machines they've got, that kind of thing. Now it's funny, over the last few weeks I have talked quite a bit about sort of cash flow issues and me screwing up my business and kind of just like not being able to get a handle on things. But you know, in the last week or two I've really buckled down, and when I've mentioned in previous videos that I'm thinking and strategizing and planning out, you know, how to get over it, I really have been doing a lot of that, a lot of thinking and putting things into place. And you know, over the last day or two I've been thinking and watching how things are going and getting cash flow more positive and that kind of thing. It's a combination of being more aware of the finances in the business and planning to get more projects out, you know, more prototypes done, that kind of thing. Which is why I'm starting to think about this milling machine and pushing forward on that now. And you know, it's funny, most of the people I talk to, I don't think they think enough, if that makes sense. Like, people in general don't seem to take the time to, you know, to think about what they want out of life and really push towards it. I mean, maybe I've got a biased perspective. Maybe I'm not reading the world correctly. I'm not sure, but it seems to be the case. And in line with that, I've got a very good quote for you today. It's by Henry Ford, and he said, "Thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably the reason why so few engage in it."